When it comes to healthcare and long-term care decisions, women are often in a more challenging position than men. So let's take a look at some smarter money moves that might work for you. This slide outlines how, as we all age, there's an incredible jump in costs for our healthcare expenses. Healthcare costs are lowest from ages 5 to 17, as you can see, at just $2,000 per year on average. From then on, though, we see a steady increase, with costs rising to over $11,000 per year when you're over 65 years old. And some estimates show that over the last 2 decades, healthcare costs have increased twice as fast as inflation. In another video in this series, we talked about health savings accounts, or HSAs. And if you're eligible for an HSA plan, you may consider the strategic option of paying for your healthcare costs now out of pocket. You can then leave the funds in your HSA account to grow, only spending them when you're over 65, when the highest healthcare costs tend to hit us. While you're dealing with your own rising healthcare costs, some people, especially women, find themselves caregiving for their aging parents. And this is at the same time as we're also taking care of our own children and our households and careers. And here are some ideas we can recommend to people placed in this difficult role with their aging parents. First, start with having the hard conversations to assess your parents' finances and their own ability to pay for any care that they may need. Now, I know from personal experience this can be easier said than done. These can be hard conversations to have. Many of us come from households where you just don't talk about money. Or maybe your parents still always treat you like their child, so feel like they're shielding you from this kind of conversation. Or they fear giving up their own control and independence as adults to talk about it. Or they're ashamed they haven't planned it yet, or they don't want to be a burden. And I know I can go on with the emotional responses to this kind of discussion. But all that said, it's so much easier to bring this out into the open sooner rather than later. You, the adult child and potential future caregiver or helper, need to understand what assets do your parents have, what are their liabilities, and what are their income sources, in case you are called on to assist with their care. You need a list of all of their assets and how much they expect to collect from Social Security. Do they have any retirement accounts? And if so, how much is in them? And what are the account numbers? And where are they held? How do you find the information? You also need to find out if they have a healthcare proxy and a durable power of attorney that would allow you to act on their behalf if needed. And where do they want to spend their retirement? Do they expect to stay in their home until they die? Or are they expecting to enter assisted living at some point? Or move closer to you, or move in with you? Make sure you have these discussions before a time of crisis for your sake and for theirs. It's especially important to find out if your parents do expect you or other siblings to become their caregiver. And of course, how do they expect to pay for all of this care? And you also need to know your parents' wishes for their end-of-life arrangements. Again, what do they expect to happen? Do they want a funeral? Cremation, some other option? And do they maybe already have a prepaid funeral plan? And if so, where and with which company? Finally, do your parents have long-term care coverage? And when it comes to long-term care, many people assume that long-term care expenses are included as part of Medicare. They are not. We've had far too many friends and clients experience this firsthand. When it comes time to make arrangements for mom and dad, only to find out there's no money to pay for in-home care, assisted living, or the most expensive of all, a nursing home, it could be too late. One solution is a long-term care policy. We encourage all of our clients to consider individual long-term care policies for themselves, starting at around age 50. But usually the point really hits home when you're faced with the need for long-term care for a parent. Having this type of insurance coverage can help to address caring for your parents from both income and caregiving standpoints. So there are 2 basic long-term care insurance policies. The first is called a traditional policy. And it works just like a lot of other insurance we get, like car insurance, home, or health insurance. We pay a premium, and if nothing happens, the premium payments, quote unquote, go out the window. It's a use it or lose it scenario. And while that may feel wrong, think about the fact that we do exactly that with, say, our car insurance. We pay, but hopefully we never actually have to file and collect on a claim. That's seen as a good thing. But if you want to hedge your bets a bit, there's also what's called asset-based long-term care policies. Now, these types of plans, you're getting a long-term care policy and an insurance policy. And what I mean by that is that if the policy proceeds are never used for long-term care, there's a set portion of the premiums you paid in that can be paid back out, or returned, if you will, to your designated beneficiaries. So this is all well and good, but if you've ever actually shopped for a long-term care policy, you might have had some sticker shock, because the premiums are not cheap. And of course, the younger you are, the cheaper the policies tend to be, which is why we tell our clients to start thinking about it sooner rather than later. One interesting option when it comes to caring for your parents. If you and maybe your siblings who want to help mom and dad with long-term care, you could maybe come together and pool your money to pay for one of these asset-based long-term care policies. That means if nothing ever happens to mom or dad, and they don't need to use the policy to pay out for long-term care expenses, when they pass, you and your brothers and sisters would get some cash you paid in for the premiums returned back to you. But if your parents did need long-term care, at least you had a policy in place that could help you go from potentially being the one personally giving the care to instead being the person who manages their care.